All right, greetings from the wasteland. This is Freedom Phil, and what's the topic right now? When people show the Democrats and they do this whole "we care about the minorities" thing, no, no, it's just about votes. And there's a reason, like with all the cultural appropriation talk and trying to separate the groups, keep people at war, they want this to continue because when they can isolate small groups, they can guarantee that they're going to win. Because buying votes is easier than winning people's minds and hearts and the better world. Yeah, Freedomville likes to subscribe to it, and hey, turn up the video speed. Why do I always say that? Because if you're watching this, you should be watching it at 1.75, and if you're not, what are you doing? Just saying. Yeah, let's get into it. I was sitting there looking at the situation that's going on in Britain, and something was pretty well pointed out by Sargon. That if you look at the demographics, you got 25, maybe 30% of the foreign vote, these Muslims or whatnot, that vote as a bloc. And the group that votes as a bloc can overwhelm with the help of the rest of the people that are carrying the usual weight of a party. And like, well, what do you mean? If you bring a bunch of foreign people in and you promise them a bunch of free money if you just vote this way, and you get these people to consistently vote that way, guaranteeing they're going to get the benefits and, the money and no judgment for the things they're doing, then with that normal 50% that was previously there of their liberal vote, then basically you'll continue to be in power. And you can afflict your agenda upon the people. You want an example of this in America? We're going to go way back in time. Before women had the right to vote, only about 20 to 30% of people were socialist, were left-leaning. There were the hard socialists, and then there was the people that were more socially adjacent, but most people, being men that had to go to work, could see the writing on the wall that, like, hey, man, I don't want to give up more of my paycheck for some other group of people. But once you get women all voting in the same party, because predominantly women generally vote for the left. They're more likely to want to vote for, programs and whatnot at the expense of other people. Now, usually they try to mask this and say it's the rich. Oh, the rich will pay it. And they started off a lot of income taxes. They sold it to you by screwing over the rich. And I can understand during the Gilded Age, it seemed like we were building a new monarchy. I can get where people got to that. Inheritance taxes and all these other taxes. But that which is passed against the rich inevitably becomes that which is used against everyone else eventually. And eventually funneling its way down to the working class and poor. Now, just for a second, take this along the way in America and look at the so-called 60s switch. All that happened was the Democrats that previously were basically Jim Crow, segregationist Democrats just said, hey, we could continue to win these elections if we just give welfare benefits to broke people, predominantly black people. That's why they're always trying to isolate the black community. And as the black community, after what could be argued over 50 years, well, about 60 years of welfare benefits, well, a lot of the men have realized that the women in their communities are treating them worse. They're getting a worse deal. The world is not better. And a lot of people, much like you see with Latinos as well, once they've, went and built their own business, they're not interested in paying taxes for a bunch of other people's problems. See, the way the liberal continues to win elections is by keeping you poor, keeping you needing to be part of a group that is relying off of someone else's tax-paying dollars. And people, frankly, get sick of that. They look 10, 20, 30 years later, they look at the dead bodies in the streets, people they remember that ain't around anymore, fathers in prison. And they can see that after 60 years of promises, no, the liberal has not elevated them out of the situation. Now, where does this go into the rest of America? As groups start to wake up and realize that no, that's them trying to help us out of a situation isn't actually getting us out of it. In fact, it's made it worse. Proof positive is there were more single mother households in the white community than the black community before the welfare expansion. Well, now you need a new group of people. And this is why we see, in America particularly, and you see this in Europe and Britain, the situation where they have to constantly bring in poor, uneducated foreigners. Maybe skilled, but not educated. People that are good for business, good for having children that always have their parents being threatened of being deported. Therefore, you can guarantee that next generation, and if you can fake the votes, if you can say, well, voter ID is racist. Well, that statement is racist on its own. Are you saying that someone who gets an ID for, school or, a driver's license, apparently these people are just substandard and they can't figure out how to do these things? No, the expectation that they're failures is a racist concept. This is the bigotry of low expectations. There's a reason they do that. They want to flood a lot of areas with a huge number of people, count them as citizens, and then quietly massage the elections in their direction. See, it doesn't take a massive amount of people to consistently swing districts, eventually states, counties, and states. Maybe only 10%, even 5% can do it. If you're on a razor margin regularly on elections, if you get 5% of illegal voting or people that, let's say for racial reasons or whatever, ideological reasons, all vote the same, religious reasons. If you get 5% more, that's like taking 10% total because it's 5% the enemy doesn't have. So you start putting that together, and that's the reason that when you see a lot of the crap going on, you might have a 50-50 normal heritage vote situation in, say, the UK or parts of America. But if you add 25, 10, 20% foreign voters that'll vote as a bloc, and you see this in Minnesota, for instance, with the Somalians, they all vote a certain direction. It's about power and money. And if you're getting a check via voting the government, no offense, whether it's white, black, or whatever version of welfare, then yes, it's in your best interest to continue voting this way. And the people that were already going to vote that way, so now you guarantee that you're going to lock in elections. This is why the Democrats in America and a lot of the lefties over in Europe and the UK, why they are so hell-bent on flooding your country with foreigners. Because they realize their policies have failed their heritage peoples. The labor politics of the 80s, 70s, and the 90s had failed the people to the point where they realized they were going to lose unless they brought in a new demographic. In the same way, welfare failed most people that lived on it in America. And once the people start waking up after a generation or two, once the men start walking away to somewhere better, and then even worse, this is what really scares the left wing, when the women start walking away. Because that's supposed to be the slam dunk vote. That's the point where they'll start bringing in new people to replace you. They will want to replace their welfare voters with new welfare voters to guarantee that they will continue to be in power. So the ultimate thing here is it's never about improving your situation, because if your situation improves too much, then at that point, you're not going to vote for the left. If you're running your own business, you're not going to vote to pay more taxes. No. The only time it's in your best interest to be a left-winger is when you're taking something from someone else. Those who can do for themselves don't need the government. And that's the reason that the left-wing policies are always about keeping you subservient, weak, and begging for crumbs. But what happens when the people that beg one day wake up and say, no, we don't have to do this? That's why they're trying to replace you all the time. Don't believe me? Go talk to some other groups of people. Go take a goddamn good look around. The black community is now being filled up with foreigners. Different parts of rural America are basically filled up. How much of the UK and Europe are being filled up with Muslim foreigners? Foreigners from somewhere else. They keep you poor. And the moment you stop being grateful for being poor, they replace you with more poor people. They were never intending to improve anything. Just my thoughts. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe, take it easy.